Hi guys, welcome to our next unit, which is on something called congruent figures or congruent triangles. Some of you guys will have seen this before if you did CPM math last year. Some of you will not have seen this before. So we're going to go about doing this as if nobody has seen it, because there are those that have never seen it before. So we're going to start with congruent figures and just what it means to be congruent figures, and then we're going to work our way into triangles and some shortcuts and that kind of stuff. So to start off, what are congruent figures? Congruent figures are figures that are the same shape and size. See better? Same shape and size. All right, so to be the same shape and size, that means that all corresponding sides are congruent. And that's the symbol right there for a congruent, an equal sign with a little swirly on top. So all corresponding sides are congruent, and all corresponding angles are congruent. So in order for the figures themselves to be congruent, both of these have to be true. All corresponding sides are congruent, and all corresponding angles are congruent. So when angles and sides are congruent, that means they are the exact same measurement. So in this picture here, we're going to look at corresponding sides and angles. And we're going to do this by marking them. So if I tell you that AB and XY are the same, and then I'm going to tell you that AC and XZ are the same, and then finally that BC and YZ are the same. So if you notice how I marked them, AB and XY were both marked with one line. We call those tick marks. So one tick mark, and they're the same. XZ and AC have two tick marks, meaning those are the same. And then YZ and BC have three, meaning those are the same. We can employ the same idea for the angles. So angle A is congruent to angle X, so I put one arc. Angle C is congruent to angle Z, so I put 2. And then angle B is congruent to angle Y, and I put 3. So the number of markings that you see on a side or an angle helps us to identify which angle corresponds with which angle, as well as side to side. So how do we write a congruent statement? So we have our two triangles. So triangle, let's call this one ABC. So A, B, C. And it's congruent to what triangle? Now the order that we write our letters makes a difference. So if we look at angle A had one little arc on it. So which angle has one arc over here? Angle X. So that means X has to go first, because A and X are the same number of arcs. From there, we go to the two arcs, so that would be C. Actually, no, we don't. We go to B, sorry, next. So B is 3 arcs, so that means it has to match with Y, which has 3 arcs. So A had 1, X has 1. B has 3, Y has 3. C has 2, so that means it has to go with Z that has 2. So what you're looking for is that you're matching up your angles. So A matched with X, B matched with Y, and C matches with Z. So you need to make sure that those orders are correct when you're writing out your statements. So what we're going to be looking at in number 1 here. So again, if you need to pause me so you can draw pictures, go ahead and just hit pause, but I'm going to keep going. So here we're just going to practice marking up our picture based on a congruent statement. So we have our congruent statement right here. So this here is called a congruence statement. Okay. So when we read this statement, I'm going to match up letters. So A goes with X. So on A, I make 1 mark. On X, I make 1 mark. B matches with Y. So B, I'm going to do 2 marks. Y, I'm going to do 2 marks. And then let's see, we have C matches with Z. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So there's our angles. So now we have to do our sides. Forgot to underline those two. Okay, so when it comes to the sides, we want to look at the order of our letters. So A and B are right next to each other in our order, and then so are X and Y. So that means those two sides, A, B, and X, Y, are congruent. They're the ones that go together. Let's see, next B and C are next to each other, and Y and Z are next to each other. So that means BC and YZ are congruent to one another. And then for our final, let's see, what color have I not used? This one, okay. I go to my outside. A and C are on the outside. X and Y are on the outside. So AC and XY. So when we look at a statement and we mark up our picture, we're going to look for the angles, match letter to letter, and on the sides we mark 2 letters with 2 letters. So A and B, X and Y, B and C, Y and Z, and then the outer 2, AC, XZ. So what we're going to be looking at mostly in our 3-1 assignment is we're going to be looking to identify congruent pairs, match up angles, or we're even going to be looking to answer the question, are the triangles congruent? So here I've drawn 2 triangles, and so we want to make sure we understand what we're looking for when we're trying to figure out if 2 figures are congruent. So we need to show sides congruent, all sides, and all angles. Those are the 2 things we're looking for to be able to say that the figures are congruent. So here I have this figure. I know that T and Q, based on the picture, those are both 90 degrees. So I know angle T is congruent to angle Q. So that's one angle. I know this angle here is 40. That's vertical to this one here. So that one's also 40. So I know that angle SRT is congruent to angle QRP. So I had to use 3 letters there because on vertical angles, if we use just one and say angle R, I don't know which one you're talking about. So whenever we do vertical angles, you have to use the 3-letter labeling for your angles, otherwise I don't know what you're talking about. So we have angle SRT and QRP to represent our 2 40-degree angles. All right, so that's 2 angles down. Can I find a third? So if I look at what I know in my triangle so far, I know that this is 90 and this is 40. Well, using our triangle sum theorem, I can figure out what this missing angle is. So if I do 180 minus 90 minus 40, I can find that this angle would be 50. I can do the same thing up here. If this is 90 and this is 40, I can do 180 minus 90 minus 40, which equals 50. So I've just shown that angle S is congruent to angle P because they're both 50. So I was able to show all three angles. So what about the sides? Do we know anything about the sides? Nope. There's no labeling on our sides whatsoever, so I know nothing about the sides. So that means we do not have enough information. So I cannot say these are congruent because I do not have enough information. Okay, so we're going to do one more here where we're going to answer the same question, are the figures congruent? And then I'm going to save the last two examples for class. Okay, so if I look at this one, again, number 4, if you want to copy it down, we're not doing this right now. I'm just going to end with 3. Are these congruent? So I'm going to start the same way. I'm looking for all sides congruent and all angles congruent. So let's look at what I have. So based on markings, I know that BA is congruent to CD, so that's one side. I know BC is congruent to AD, that's another side. What about a third side? So AC. So I have two triangles. I have this one, ABC, and ACD. So AC here, we can say it's congruent to itself by what we call the reflexive property, because it's the same line. So because here that's a shared side, we can say it's congruent to itself by the reflexive property. So there I was able to write all three sides were congruent, so that checks off all the sides. So now let's go to the angles. And again, I'm going to start with my markings. So I know angle A is congruent to angle C based on markings. I know that, oh, here I need to use 3 letters because I've got I have multiple angles on a vertex. So let's change my writing here. So I'm talking about BAC, angle BAC is congruent to angle, so that was this little one, DCA. Okay, so that's talking about these two angles, BAC and DCA. Next, I have the ones with 2 markings, so that would be BCA is congruent to DAC. Okay, so I've got 2 angles. I just need to show the third one. So how can I figure out this third angle here? Well, we have something that we actually used in number 2, but we did it with numbers. If I know, so we have something called the third angle theorem that says if 2 angles of a triangle are congruent, then the third angle is also congruent. To abbreviate, I'm using the symbol for congruent rather than writing out the word. Same with the angle, I use the symbol for angle instead of writing out the word. So in example number 2, I knew what 2 angles were, but I was able to solve for the third angle because I knew numbers. Here I don't know numbers, so I have to use this theorem that says if I know 2 angles, I know 2 angles are congruent, so the third one has to be congruent. So angle B has to be congruent to angle D. and that's by the third angle theorem. Oops, I hope I spell it right. THM is an abbreviation for theorem, so when you see that, it's just an abbreviation. So if we're able to show all sides and all angles are congruent, then we say yes, we have congruent figures. Sorry, I didn't have room underneath, so I'm writing my answer up top. All right, so we're gonna finish these up in class on Thursday or Friday, whichever day I have you. And we've got 2 more to go through where we're gonna use congruency to solve for different values of x and y. So come ready with questions if you have them, so we can get them answered and then start our lesson. I hope you guys all have a great night.